Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the We Are Not Lonely podcast. This is episode 17, and I'm going to be exploring the philosophies of the left. Now, one of the reasons that I got interested in this entire topic was because of the whole Elon Musk buying Twitter thing, and I spoke about that last week in the previous podcast episode. Now, the effects of Elon Musk buying Twitter are still, there's still ripples in the space-time continuum. People are extremely annoyed. Particularly, there's this whole thing about the people on the left being annoyed that free speech is going to exist, and everything that they've said is that Twitter is going to become a platform for hate speech and racism and so on and so forth. So, in response to all of this, I believe that Elon, like my interest in this particularly began at this point where Elon Musk shared a meme about how the political left has shifted further and further left over the years. They've become, the left has shifted. Whereas the left has shifted dramatically to the left, for the far left, whereas the right has shifted a little bit. So in this shift, there's no possible middle because the thing that used to be middle is now being considered, right wing politics. So I wanted to understand this entire thing. What exactly are they talking about in this particular thing? So Elon Musk tweeted a meme, and I got curious about the whole left and right wing political ideology split. So I decided to do a little bit of reading, and I wanted to understand this. So I've had a couple of discussions with a couple of friends, one of them who's a sociologist as well, and I've done a decent amount of reading, but I will say that since I don't belong to the left, there's going to be a fair amount of bias. I will do my best to consciously cancel out all of the bias that I have. And I will do my best not to strawman this argument as well. I will try to represent the left. I will try to represent a fair summary of the left-wing politics and ideology. All right? So without further ado, let's go in. First of all, I wanted to understand what the political left and the right are. So I did a little bit of reading. I did quite a bit of reading over the past couple of days. And it's a very interesting subject, I will tell you that. But anyway, without any personal flavor, let's get into this. So first thing I saw was like a graph, like a sort of a spectrum that showcased the far left to the far right, and these are some of the things that appear. Now, reading from far left to far right, starting off on the left, we have anarchy, and we go further to the right, we get communism, socialism, liberalism, and somewhere between liberalism and conservatism, we get the metaphorical center of this political spectrum. Moving further right from conservatism, we get monarchism, Nazism, and fascism, right? So historically, what we've seen is that the innovators are on the left, the moderates are in the center, and the conscientious, the defenders of the constitution, of the present constitution, are on the right. Now, that basically means that most of the social changes that have come about, according to this particular article that I read, that I'm going to be linking in the description, that serves to educate people on the left and right, it seems to suggest that most of the social changes that have come about have originated from the left. Now, the next bit that I'm going to speak about is something that I heard on a Jordan Peterson podcast with somebody. He was speaking about how in the big five traits, people who are on the left are generally more creative and open, whereas those on the right are more conscientious. Right? Anyway. That's an interesting split, but I'm just going to keep moving on. So this, I understand the idea of a left and right political spectrum popped up sometime in France, and generally this was the left was considered the revolutionary, and the right were, the royalists, people who supported the royal family, and so on and so forth. Now, moving on from that, I want to talk about their views and understand some of their views. So, some of the issues that the left concerns themselves with are like things like same-sex marriages, abortion, immigration, LGBTQ plus issues, feminism, and generally their ideas are more socialist in nature, right? So they have really progressive views, and their views on all of these things like same-sex, abortion, immigration are particularly progressive. They're for all of this. By comparison, the far right, the conservative. So the on the left we generally call them liberals, on the right we call them conservative, right? So the liberals are quite liberal, whereas the conservatives are conservative. So that's where the whole thing comes from with respect to new ideas. Again, the point that I made about Dr. Peterson speaking about how people on the left are generally more open, they have a higher trait openness. That kind of plays a part in this because they're open to new ideas, whereas those on the right are more they don't their views on things like same-sex marriages, abortion, immigration, LGBTQ plus issues, feminism, and socialist ideas are generally not that progressive. They're pretty conservative, right? Another difference that I've sort of found out is that the left favors increased wealth redistribution through taxes, a lot more government intervention, or be it through healthcare, like universal healthcare, things like uh, heavy government intervention, particularly in businesses. Whereas on the right, you have ideally like they advocate free market, minimal interference of the government in the business field, right? So that's some of the differences, broadly speaking, between the left and the right. So going by this, if we had to summarize some of the issues that the left were into, we would say that, like, they're into identity politics, intersectionality, gender politics, including LGBTQ plus issues, feminism, critical race theory, and communism slash socialism, right? These are some of the things, and I'm going to try to explore each of these as we move on, right? So going generally, it looks like most of the ideas of the left are primarily either Marxist or postmodern in nature, and both of these are contradictory, but we'll get to that later. Let's start off with the big fish, communism. Now, communism originated through the ideas of Karl Marx, right? In the writings of Karl Marx, things like Das Kapital. Essentially, the idea. I'm just gonna skip to the end, and then I'm gonna go through the entire thing, and we'll touch on the end again. So, communism is it basically they say that you achieve communism when everybody works according to their ability and receives according to their needs. Okay, some of the things of communism include, some of the tenets of communism include no private property because everything is publicly owned, that is collectively, aka state owned, and everybody's needs are taken care of by the state, which pays them according to their needs, right? So the objective of communism is to better society in two stages. First, there's like a violent uprising by which all the means of production are seized from the bourgeoisie and held by the proletariat. All right. So basically, this part is particularly violent and bloody, and it calls for violent and bloody action. Things like, I suppose this is where the origin of things like eat the rich pop up. Not quite sure, but yeah. So this is supposed to make society more equal, and it will end all exploitation and discrimination, because the bourgeoisie are the ones who are evil and the proletariat are being oppressed by the bourgeoisie, right? There's an oppressor and there's a victim, and the victim has to rise up against the oppressor and take away the means of production. This is basically a forced redistribution of wealth. After this, the proletariat will own all the means of production, and this is the second phase is called building socialism, where the communist state is built. They get rid of all their enemies. They either eliminate all their enemies or they re-educate all their enemies into socialism. Yes, so anybody against socialism either gets re-educated or eliminated. The other thing is that they build a communist state under the watchful eyes of a communist-led dictatorship. Now, the dictatorship is composed of the proletariat, the working class. So I guess I have to explain that. So the proletariat represents laborers, essentially the working class, who, according to Karl Marx, are robbed by capitalists. They're not paid the fair value for their work. They're not paid the full value for their work, right? And the bourgeoisie are the rich, the ones who own all the capital and who can afford to. They just provide capital and use that capital to acquire labor, and that the labor is the one who actually. The labor does not own the means of production, but the bourgeoisie uses the laborer, the proletariat, to convert the capital into a product, and he sells it, he makes money, something like that. That's the idea, right? And over here, it's the state, it's the proletariat. They take back the means of production, and they will provide for everybody. Everybody still works, but the state takes care of their basic needs, and they provide everything, including shelter. Everything is publicly owned, aka state owned. All right. So that is communism. Essentially, again, like I repeat, it's achieved when everybody works according to their ability and they're paid according to their needs. There's no private property. Everything is state owned. That's the important part of communism. All right. So I think we're done with that. Let's move on to the next thing, right? Identity politics and intersectionality. Now, this is like technically the new wave of feminism that has cropped up, if I understand it right. The reason that it popped up was because the first and second wave feminists. So basically, they said that traditional feminism is not enough to explain the oppression of certain groups, right? So they came up with a wide array of factors to explain that different people experience discrimination and privilege based on a wide array of factors, including gender, caste, sex, race, ethnicity, class, sexuality, religion, disability, physical appearance, and height. That's like around 12 factors. So essentially, what they're saying is, for example, a black trans woman suffers simultaneously from racism, misogyny, and transphobia. Whereas compared to a white cis woman, she only suffers from misogyny. So it's basically depending on the identity, you can claim you get a certain amount of you get a place in the victimhood hierarchy. All right. So altogether, these factors, these 12 factors, simultaneously they can be simultaneously both empowering and oppressing. So essentially, it broadens the lens of suffering, of victimhood, compared to the first two waves of feminism, right? So your group identity based on the above factors. So you're supposed to look at that. So let's see. Right. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So that's essentially a way to measure how much victimhood you can claim, right? Like I spoke about the black trans woman suffering from racism, misogyny, and transphobia compared to a white woman who suffers only from misogyny. Of course, this intersectionality encompasses a bunch of studies, including gender studies such as like LGBTQ plus issues, feminism, and critical race theory. Uh, since gender studies is one of the most important, I'm going to be touching on that next, but I'm going to be touching on postmodernism first because it's startlingly relevant to the entire thing, right? So let's talk about postmodernism. Initially, I mentioned that the politics of the left seem to be Marxist and postmodern in nature, like especially the present situation. It seems to be a combination of Marxist thought and postmodern thought. The issues that they're campaigning and they're championing, right? So let's talk about postmodern theory, postmodern philosophies. Essentially, postmodern philosophy rejects the idea of a universal truth. Everything is subjective, nothing is real, nothing has any meaning, everything is a social construct. Even the past has no basis, there is no historical objective, there's no objective historical truth, which is kind of like, considering the entire thing, it's remarkably consistent because nothing has meaning, so why would objective historical truth have any meaning? And it also is all about moral relativism. Now, to understand that, since everything is a social construct, there are different societies that have different morals. And just because there are different morals doesn't mean that there's one absolute superior moral, right? It basically means that no standpoint is uniquely privileged above all others. It rejects the universal validity of binary oppositions, identity, and categorization. This bit is important, and I'm going to be talking about that when I get to gender theory and gender studies. So if we had to summarize this, reality is whatever you make of it, because everything is a social construct or a mental construct. Reality itself is a mental construct, right? So another thing that I found over here was that essentially nothing exists except as an expression of power. I believe this is from an idea of Foucault. And this power would either be economical or political, and everything that exists, including knowledge claims and value systems, are nothing but social constructs that are constructed to further this ability, this power that you have over other people. So this finally brings us to gender theory, the big can of worms. But I'm gonna again I've been doing my best to remain remarkably unbiased. If anything has crept in, it's because I'm sorry about bringing in bias when I'm trying to be unbiased. That's the only thing I'm sorry for. Yeah. This brings us to gender theory. Finally, let's go to that. So the thing is, a lot of the ideas spoken about by gender theorists are remarkably postmodern in nature, right? They do this whole deconstruction of everything. Basically, nothing is real. Gender is a social construct because, postmodern theory says everything's a social construct, nothing is real. So gender is also a social construct. There's no biological reality, and you are whatever your gender is, whatever you say you are, right? If you feel like you're a woman, you're a woman. If you feel like you're a man, you're a man. If you don't feel like it, there are a bunch of other identities that you can identify with. Essentially, the argument is that gender is subjective, biology is not real, and it all doesn't matter, yeah. So, the interesting thing that I found is that even the rebuttal of any criticism of gender theory, or the more radical aspects of gender theory, also draws inspiration from postmodernists, where in postmodern theory, any claims of an objective reality, of objective facts, are dismissed as naive realism. And realism again is that there is a belief that things are real except as a concept, except as they are independently real despite of in spite of they're independently real. They don't require a mind to perceive them to be real. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. So, like, of course, there's nothing real. So the response to an opposition of gender theory is generally met with accusations of bigotry and transphobia. Again, this is happening because most people don't understand the complexities of postmodern theories. They don't understand that nothing is real. Everything is subjective. There's no meaning to anything that we do. Right. So I've taken about 22 odd minutes, and I think I've summarized the left's position on this particular topic pretty well, right? I hope so, because now it's my turn to start critiquing them. And I'm going to start with Marxism, right? I never promised to not critique. I did say that I will try my best not to critique while I was talking about the theory itself, right? So I'm not saying that it's wrong to have a particular political ideology. What I am saying is currently one end of the political spectrum is rapidly moving towards alarming non-scientific thinking. They've rejected reality. Again, this makes remarkable sense considering that considering the postmodern claim that nothing exists, right? I'm gonna have to get deeper into get deeper into postmodernism. Yeah, that's what she said. Get deeper. That's what she said. Yeah, but yeah, I'm gonna have to do some more reading on all of this. But here's my attempt. I think I summarized the argument of the left pretty well, and here's what I'm going to try. All right. Understanding the views. There is communism, right? Now the thing about communism is that it has never worked. All right. Every time it's been implemented, millions of people have died. They did this in the USSR, and they killed their own people. Millions of them. Millions more died of starvation. They tried this in Maoist China. Hundreds of millions of people died because of this particular theory. And it astounds me that even today we have people claiming that real Marxism hasn't been tried out. Right? Now, I will admit that the idea of wealth redistribution is an incredibly thorny one. It's extremely difficult, and we need to do it in a way that doesn't break the game that humans are playing. You know, the game of money that I've spoken about. We can't just tell people that are really good at playing the game that, hey, it's no fair, you're too good, you can't keep playing the game. We need to find a way to keep them still playing the game while also motivating, while rising up other players. But we can't just keep throwing penalties at people who are playing the game too well. That's, again, this is the view that I currently hold, and it might change as I am exposed to more and more material, and I will keep you updated on that. But so far, right, my view on communism is this. Every time it's been tried, it's led to hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions of people dying. Alright? Communism has killed a lot of people. An unimaginable amount of people. Alright? And it astounds me that there are still people who argue and advocate for such a thing. Alright? Communism has been experimented upon, and that experiment has killed millions of people. You don't need to look any further than the USSR and China. Alright, that's the first thing. The second thing, I'm moving on to intersectionality. One of the more brilliant arguments of intersectionality and intersectional feminists is that the idea of equity, we need to fix outcome. And this is what has brought about this whole thing of diversity hiring in a lot of corporations, including Netflix and all across the board. Diversity is a big buzzword today. This is something called equality of outcome. You're ensuring the equality of outcome, and by doing so, you have ensured that there is no equality of opportunity because you've already fixed the outcome, right? This is a problem that can be found in multiple countries. India is facing this through reservations where you've essentially fixed the outcome before itself. Yeah. In the West, the idea that it's also happening all the way up to all the way up to the parliament, where a certain amount of seats are reserved for women. All right. Now, that's generally called equity, right? Give each person what they require. But that's the problem, all right? When feminists demand equality of outcome, they always demand equality of outcome in the more lucrative positions. They always point to things such as there are only a few women in the top 100, as in the top 100 Forbes, the Forbes top 100 companies, very few women CEOs. We need to fix that. We need to have equal amounts of men and women in the Forbes top 100 companies. They don't look at jobs like bricklaying and oil drilling and the merchant navy, where it's predominantly men. Bricklayers are predominantly men, all right, and there are certain professions that are completely dominated by women, such as nursing. They don't look at the parts where essentially what they're doing is they're cherry picking. They're taking the best. They're looking at the positions of power and they're saying, we want positions of power. Let us get at it. So we're not encouraging the best person for the job. All right. Now I have my own qualms on this whole the system of democracy, but I'm doing. The reason I haven't spoken about it is because I want to refine my understanding of the entire issue before I make my point on it. Right. Ideally, we would live in a meritocracy where the best person for the job gets the job. Or we have to vote, we have an option of candidates who are ideally suited. They have the requisite qualifications for that particular job. But yeah, that's an issue. All right. My argument against intersectionality is that, it's just. I'm trying not to say it's just so stupid because that's not really a decent argument, right? It's just that, I think it's focusing on the wrong thing, man. It's focusing, again, it's focusing on the equality of outcome, right? It's ended up in diversity hires. There's been a bunch of shows all across the board that have remarkably failed. A bunch of new Marvel comics, a bunch of comic artists and writers who are hired for diversity, LGBTQ plus and all women writers. They have produced shows that have been remarkably bad. Ghostbusters, Modern Version, anybody? Charlie's Angels, the new one, anybody? So again and again you've been seeing this thing where diversity hires are actually harming the case for so-called gender equality of outcome, right? Because when you fix the outcome, you get crap shows. Like, what was that Starfire's thing? That one? Starfire's daughter comic. Yeah, so there's this comic called I Am Not Starfire, and everybody's been shitting on it, right? Because it's a blatant self-insert and the character's unlikable, there's no real story, and it's absolutely dog shit. I've been searching for this and I can't find it. God damn it, I can't find it. It's, yeah. No. Okay, I can't find it. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll link a post in the description. It's uh, basically it's this comic that had like 100% women writing team. There's apparently very diverse, but I don't see. There's so much irony in that 100% women diverse team. Where's the But yeah, this show tanked because it had a dog shit story. The main characters were supposed to be strong, independent women, and they just end up being like assholes, unlikable assholes. Okay, now I've already complained about feminism several times, right? And I'm not going to do that again. But let's move on to postmodern philosophies. Now, like postmodern philosophy is just like extreme nihilism because nothing matters, and in some ways, this concept of nothing having any meaning is very liberating, right? Of course, it brings about a great deal of depression because oh, nothing has any meaning. Now, people say that, but I'm pretty sure they don't live like that. You know why? And this is why. Okay, if nothing is real, that means that suffering isn't real as well. But nobody lives in a way that shows that they believe that suffering is not real, right? Because generally speaking, people try to avoid suffering, and uh, despite the fact that it's like omnipresent and we all have to go through it, the Buddhist philosophy and even the ancient Vedic philosophy is that we live in this ocean of suffering. Life is an ocean of suffering, and iha samsare bahudustare. This world is an ocean of suffering, and the ancient Indian philosophy is that you're born again and again, and you're born and you die again, and you're swimming in this ocean of suffering, and you're looking desperately for a way out. My point is that there's nobody who lives as though their life has no meaning. All right, this is, I mean, it's an incredibly interesting viewpoint. It makes for really good conversation that nothing has any meaning. But it's rejecting modern scientific rigor. It has zero scientific rigor. It's just being contrarian for being. It seems like it's just being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, right? Um, Again, like it's very difficult for me just to go outrightly and say this is so fucking stupid. All right, but in the case of postmodern philosophy, is that it is so fucking stupid, right? Because everything's subjective. There is no reality. Uh, Everything is a construct. Nothing is real. I mean, there are certain verifiable facts. There are certain mathematical realities. But if nothing was real and everything was just a construct, right? If the math wasn't real, it wouldn't be possible for us to eject a freaking rocket out into space. Okay? So is gravity like subjective then? Is gravity not real? Is suffering not real? Like, like, it's very difficult for me to contend with this postmodern philosophy because I was introduced to this quite recently, and at the moment my brain's just like, bro, that's just fucking stupid. It just sounds like something that like a stoner would say in the back, and it's very difficult for me to have to take this seriously and be like, okay, now nothing is real. How do you contend with that from a logical perspective? Because even logic and rational thinking is a social construct according to postmodernism. Yeah. Oh, fuck, dude. This is such a can of worms. This is hardcore, dude. This is hardcore. This is hardcore. I. Basically, this sounds like. It sounds very much like a person who has psychosis, who has lost touch with reality. To say that there's no objective truth, nothing is real. Okay? Like, if nothing is real, explain why when my fist punched you in the face, you're bleeding. I'm sorry. I can't take postmodernism seriously. I'm going to have to do a lot more study on it. Yeah? And obviously when like I say postmodern, when I can't take this whole postmodernist claim of subjective reality seriously, it's going to make it very difficult for me to take the entire gender theory thing seriously. Now, this is an extremely controversial take. I will give you that. Right? But then I just spoke about how there are certain biological realities. Now, the general, like, my brain's just imploding from the fact that there are actual people trying to comprehend the fact that there are actual people who believe in this. I wanted to say we need a new plague, but then I realized we're in the middle of one and it's just about to end. So I shouldn't really say that. What comes after plague, dude? Like what? Plague, war, plague. I am supposed to leave you with something instead of just like fucking like empty silences, but honestly, like, I think my patience has run its course. I've gone about 25 minutes trying to comprehend the modern equivalent, the modern philosophy of the left, and it kind of seems insane, man. Like, I don't know. To reject notions such as reality, that sounds like a psychological disorder, psychosis, schizophrenia, whatever. Yeah, I think it's psychosis, because psychosis is the one in which the subject loses touch with reality. God damn, dude. To think that there are actual people who believe that. Yeah, this is fucked up. I've lost all hope. I decided. Oh man, I can't believe. Okay, so when I started this, I just started this as a way to understand the political left. And now that like I've done my bit in trying to understand them, I'm just sitting here thinking there's no fucking hope for humanity, man. The sixth Holocene extinction is gonna take us all. Oh man, yeah. Yeah, sorry to end on this note. I will try to make next week a lot more positive. But yeah, if you think that I did a decent job, at least in the beginning, trying to explain the basis of the left think, then let me know. If you don't think I did a decent job, let me know in the comments as well. Like, share, if you like it, leave a like, leave a comment telling me why you liked it. If you don't, leave a dislike and tell me why you don't like it. I have the dislike button extension. I can see it. Don't worry, my fifis won't be hurt. I suppose I should end this by saying facts over feelings. Yeah, that's about it. Facts over feelings, everybody. But then they would just counter saying facts aren't objective. Facts aren't objective. Facts are a social construct. Everything's social.